Look at your hands for a moment. Really look. The lines, the color, the small movements when you flex a finger. You feel like you're seeing them, fully, in high resolution, exactly as they are. You are not. Most of what your brain does with the world is throw it away, and what reaches you as seeing your hand is a compressed sketch your brain drew from a fraction of the incoming data. The startling part isn't that deletion happens. It's what your brain chooses to keep, and why the leftovers feel like the whole thing. Here's where it turns strange. If your brain is deleting almost everything, then the seamless, continuous world you're experiencing right now is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. And a reconstruction can be wrong in ways a recording never could. So how much is actually being thrown away? The numbers are almost hard to say out loud. Your eyes alone send roughly 10 million bits per second up the optic nerve toward the brain. The estimates for how much of that reaches conscious awareness hover somewhere around 40 to 50 bits per second. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between a fire hose and a single dripping tap. The retina captures a flood. What you get to keep is a trickle. I want to be careful here, because that 40 bits figure gets thrown around a lot, and it's shakier than people admit. It comes from older information theory estimates, and depending on how you define conscious processing, the real number could be higher. But even the generous versions land in the same place. The gap between what enters and what you experience is enormous, by any honest count. The exact figure is arguable. The scale of the deletion is not. Now, why would a brain build itself this way? Why throw away expensive, hard-won data your eyes worked so hard to collect? Because the brain runs on a strict energy budget, and attention is the accountant. Your brain is about 2% of your body weight and burns roughly 20% of your resting calories. It cannot afford to consciously process 10 million bits a second, so it doesn't. It samples, guesses, and fills in the rest, and the filling in is so good you never notice the seams. Think of it like a person listening to a phone call on a bad line. The line only carries a narrow slice of the actual sound of a human voice. Most of the acoustic richness is stripped out before it ever reaches you. And yet you don't hear gaps or silence. Your brain hears, "my daughter's voice," and paints in everything the line dropped. That painting in is happening constantly, everywhere, in every sense you have. The phone line is your nervous system. The voice you're sure you're hearing is mostly reconstruction. Let me show you the deletion directly, using your own eyes as the evidence. Close your left eye. With your right eye, stare at something across the room and hold your gaze completely still. Now bring your left hand into your right side vision and wiggle a finger slowly from the far right edge inward. Somewhere out there, roughly 15 degrees to the side, that finger will vanish. Not blur, not fade, vanish. And then reappear as it keeps moving. You just found your blind spot. It's the patch of retina where the optic nerve punches through the back of your eye, and it has no light receptors at all. There is a hole in your vision the size of 9 full moons, and you have never once seen it as a whole. Why not? Why isn't there a black dot floating in your sight every waking second? Because your brain doesn't leave the gap empty. It looks at whatever surrounds the missing patch, and paints the hole to match. Blank wall behind it, it paints wall. Wooden floor, it paints floor. Your brain is not showing you the world, it's showing you its best guess about the world, and it fills the blind spot with fabricated content so convincing you'd have sworn there was nothing missing. That guess is called perceptual filling in, and it's not a rare trick, it's the ordinary way you see all the time. So if the blind spot is invented, a harder question arrives. How much of the rest is invented too? Consider what your eyes are physically doing while you read this. They are not gliding smoothly. They jump, 3 to 4 rapid flicks per second, called saccades. Fast little ballistic movements between fixation points. And here's the detail almost nobody is told. During each of those jumps, your vision is essentially switched off. The image would be a useless smear if it weren't, so your brain suppresses it. This is saccadic masking, and it means you go blind for a fraction of a second, several times every second, all day long. Add it up and you spend somewhere between 60 and 90 minutes of your waking day functionally blind, and you have never noticed one instant of it. Where does the darkness go? Why don't you experience the world strobing and blacking out constantly? Because your brain edits the blackouts out and stitches the remaining fixations into one smooth, continuous stream, the way a film editor cuts out the moments between takes so the finished movie flows. You are not watching live footage. You are watching the edit, and the editor works so fast and so quietly that you've mistaken the finished film for the raw event. There's a way to catch the editor red-handed. Stand in front of a mirror, close enough to see your own eyes clearly. Now look at your left eye, then your right eye, then back to your left. Move your gaze deliberately between them. You will never, not once, catch your own eyes moving. The motion is invisible to you, but anyone standing beside you sees your eyes dart back and forth plainly. Your brain has deleted the very movement your own body is making, in real time, from the one vantage point where you'd most expect to see it. If you've ever tried this and felt a small vertigo when it worked, that's the machinery becoming visible for a second. So what survives? If 10 million bits go in and a trickle comes out, what does the brain decide is worth keeping? Change, mostly. Contrast, edges, motion, the unexpected. Your visual system is built to notice difference and ignore sameness, because sameness carries no new information, and difference might carry a threat or an opportunity. A thing that stays constant, the steady pressure of the chair against your back, the collar touching your neck, gets deleted from awareness within seconds. It was there. You stopped receiving it. This is sensory adaptation, and you can feel it the instant I name it. You can suddenly feel your feet inside your shoes right now, only because I mentioned them. That sensation was always arriving. Your brain had simply decided it wasn't worth your attention until the word made it new again. There's a beautiful cross-field way to understand this, borrowed from how engineers compress video. A video file doesn't store every pixel of every frame. That would be enormous and mostly wasteful. Instead, it stores one full frame, then only the changes from frame to frame. The parts of the picture that stay still get referenced, not re-recorded. Your brain runs almost exactly this compression scheme. It holds a model of the room and updates only what changes. The unchanging wall behind you isn't being freshly seen moment to moment. It's being remembered and assumed. You are living inside a predictive compression file, and most of what you call seeing is the brain declining to re-download what it thinks hasn't changed, which leads somewhere unsettling. If your brain assumes the unchanged parts of the world are still there without checking, what happens when they've quietly changed and you never looked? They tested exactly this, and the result has a name: change blindness. In one well-known line of experiments in the late 1990s, researchers had a stranger stop someone on a campus to ask for directions. Mid-conversation, two people carrying a door walked between them, and during that brief blockage, the original stranger was swapped for a completely different person. Different height, different clothes, different voice. Roughly half the people never noticed they were now talking to an entirely different human being. Half. The person standing right in front of them changed, and their brain, assuming continuity, simply carried the old model forward without updating it. Read that again. A different face, a different body, a different voice, and half of them kept talking as if nothing had happened. Your brain would rather trust its prediction than recheck the world. Continuity is the assumption. The evidence is optional. So now I want to ask the real question, the one underneath all of this. If your brain deletes most of the incoming world, invents the missing pieces, blanks itself out several times a second, and trusts its model over the evidence in front of your eyes, then what, exactly, are you experiencing? Because it isn't the world. The world was 10 million bits. You're holding 40. If this is already loosening something in how you think about your own eyes, and the next part goes further, into whether now is even happening when you think it is, subscribe now, because that piece is a few minutes off, and it's the reason this question matters at all. Here's the layer most people never reach. Everything I've described so far is about what gets deleted in space. But there's a deletion happening in time, and it's stranger. Signals from different senses travel at different speeds and take different amounts of time to process. Sound and light arrive and get handled on slightly different schedules. Touch from your toe has farther to travel up the nerve than touch from your cheek. If your brain simply presented each signal the moment it finished processing it, your experience would be a chaos of things arriving out of order. It doesn't do that. It waits. It buffers the incoming signals, holds them, and assembles a single synchronized now out of pieces that did not actually arrive together, which means the present moment you are experiencing is not the present. It's a slightly delayed, carefully edited construction, the brain's best reconstruction of a moment that has already passed, by something like a tenth to a couple tenths of a second. You are always living a fraction behind. The now, you feel so certain of, is a story your brain finished writing after the fact, then handed to you stamped with the word present. How do we know the brain postdates experience like this? Because of a set of experiments that troubled people for decades, work on the timing of conscious decisions, and related studies on how the brain can shift the felt timing of an event backward to make a coherent story. The interpretations are genuinely disputed. Serious researchers still argue about what those readiness signals mean, and whether they say anything about will at all. I won't pretend that debate is settled, because it isn't. But the narrower finding holds up. The brain routinely arranges the felt order of events to serve coherence, not accuracy. The timeline you experience is edited. The only real disagreement is about how much. Let me give you a physical model for what buffering does. Picture a live television broadcast running on a 7-second delay. To the audience at home, it looks perfectly live. The host speaks, and you hear it, apparently in the instant. But there's a buffer running behind the scenes, holding the signal just long enough to smooth it, sync the audio to the picture, and catch anything that needs catching. Your consciousness is that broadcast. It feels live. It is running on a delay, on a buffer, and what reaches air, what reaches you, has already been processed, synchronized, and in small ways corrected. You have never once experienced a raw, unedited moment. Not one in your entire life. If even one of these has made you look at your own perception differently, the blind spot, the saccades, the swapped stranger, the buffered now, hit like. It's the only signal that tells the platform to show this to someone else who's been trusting their eyes a little too completely. Now, here's where I have to be honest about the limits of what we know, because the contemplative version of this can slide into something science doesn't support. It is tempting to say, reality is an illusion, nothing is real, your brain makes everything up. That overshoots badly. The chair is real. The wall is real. The other person is real. Your brain is not hallucinating a fantasy. It's building a model of something genuinely out there, and the model is astonishingly good. Accurate enough to catch a ball, thread a needle, recognize a face across a crowded room. The point isn't that the world is fake. The point is subtler and harder. You have never had direct access to it. You have only ever had the model, and the model, however good, is not the thing. The philosopher's version of this is old. The map is not the territory. But your situation is stranger than a person reading a map, because a person can look up from the map and see the territory directly. You cannot look up. There is no looking up. The map is all you will ever be given. Every sunset you've called beautiful, every face you've loved, every room you've ever stood in, all of it reached you as a reconstruction assembled from a trickle of surviving data, painted in, filled out, buffered, and time-stamped by a brain doing its quiet work behind a curtain you can't get behind. So let me come back to the question in the title, now that we've earned it. What survives when your brain deletes most of reality? Not the world itself. What survives is what mattered, evolutionarily, practically, for the animal that had to eat and avoid being eaten and find its way home. Edges survive, because edges are where objects begin and end. Motion survives, because motion was once the difference between life and death. Faces survive, handled by dedicated tissue in a region called the fusiform face area, a patch on the underside of your brain so specialized that damage to it can leave a person unable to recognize their own spouse while seeing every other object perfectly. Change survives, threat survives, meaning survives. What gets deleted is everything that stayed the same, everything that didn't matter, everything your ancestors could safely ignore. Which means the reality you live in isn't a neutral copy of the world. It's a curated one. Curated by pressures that stopped applying to your life a long time ago. Your perception is optimized for a savanna you've never seen, hunting threats that no longer exist, and it's doing that same aggressive editing right now, in your living room, on your commute, across your dinner table. You are seeing the world through the priorities of an animal that needed very different things than you do. And there's one more turn, the one I find hardest to sit with. If what survives is only what mattered to survival, then the parts of reality that don't help you survive may be entirely invisible to you, and you'd have no way of knowing. There could be structure, pattern, whole dimensions of what's out there that your brain deletes not because they're unreal, but because noticing them never kept anything alive. Other animals prove this constantly. The mantis shrimp sees color channels you have no receptors for. The bat hears a sculpted world of returning echoes. The dog lives in a landscape of scent that is, to it, as vivid as sight is to you. Each of them is deleting different things and keeping different things. Each of them is certain, as you are certain, that it sees the whole world. None of them do. Neither do you. So the next time you're absolutely sure of what you saw, the argument about who did what, the certainty that the keys weren't on the table, the thing you'd swear to, hold it a little more loosely. Not because your senses are broken, they're not. They're doing precisely what they evolved to do, brilliantly, most of the time. But brilliant editing is still editing, and the editor never asked your permission, and never once showed you the footage it left on the floor. Here's the thing that stays with me. You will spend your whole life inside this reconstruction, and it will feel, every single second, like the unmediated truth. That feeling, the feeling of directly touching the real, is itself the most convincing thing your brain has ever built. It had to be convincing. A creature that doubted its own senses at every step would never have survived to doubt them at all. Share this with the one person you know who's certain they remember exactly what happened. Gently. They believe it completely, and now you understand why. You have never touched the world. You have only ever touched the map, and called it home.